It's day 2 of AmericaFest 2025, and we're live here at the Phoenix Convention Center in Arizona. It's Turning Point USA's first major conference since the assassination of its founder, Charlie Kirk. It's the largest AmericaFest in Turning Point history. We heard from CEO Erica Kirk, Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson, and many others last night. And some of the biggest names in the conservative circle are still speaking tonight through Sunday. So be sure to stay with us all night. Our special live coverage starts right now with NTD Evening News. Good evening, and we're coming to you live from Phoenix, Arizona, where day 2 of Turning Point's AmericaFest is underway. Roughly 30,000 attendees are expected to attend this conference throughout the weekend, marking it the biggest turnout yet for the organization. I am Tiffany Meyer, and we're here all weekend to bring you on-the-ground coverage. But first, a look at our top stories. President Trump unveiling new deals with 9 major drug companies, bringing the total to 14 out of 17 targeted firms as he pushes to slash U.S. prescription costs to match Europe's lower rates. The president also spontaneously vowing to summon insurance executives next to force down their premiums, while defending a recent uptick in unemployment as a result of his aggressive cuts to government jobs. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent, Mari Otsu, at the North Lawn of the White House. Mari, good evening.
Tiff, good evening. Yes, that's right. President Trump today is expanding his most favored nation, a drug pricing push, securing deals with 9 more pharmaceutical companies to deliver price cuts on some key medicines for Americans. The president was flanked in the Roosevelt Room by top executives from those 9 companies to make that announcement. Take a look.
This is the biggest thing having to do with drugs in the history of the purchase of drugs.
Every one of the news outlets in here ought to have World War III size headlines about this. This is the best achievement that could happen to our country. This is something Bernie Sanders has been clamoring for 25 years.
Rarely does President Trump skip questions, but today he says nothing could top his announcement.
Because there's no way I can take questions that are anywhere comparable to what you just witnessed.
That's as he unveils new most favored nation pricing deals with 9 major drug companies.
We are very proud to announce that we will provide Eliquis, our #1 prescribed medicine, to Medicaid for free.
We are offering our flu medicine, which is very important this year given the severity of the flu, Xofluza, for $50 direct to patients, and that's a 70% price reduction.
These deals build on earlier ones with 5 other drug makers as the White House pushes to match U.S. prices with lower drug costs in Europe.
We take the England price. As of today, 14 out of 17 largest pharmaceutical companies have now agreed.
And in a surprise move, the president spontaneously announces plans to summon insurance giants next to slash their prices too.
I'm going to call a meeting of the big insurance companies that have gotten so rich by receiving money and really far more money than they're entitled to. Insurance companies, I'm going to see if they get their price down, to put it very bluntly.
He says that meeting could happen over Christmas in Florida or back at the White House in early January. Meantime, the president defends rising unemployment numbers, blaming them on his historic cuts to government jobs.
The only reason our unemployment tucked up and went up to 4.5%, which it went up to 4.5%, which is quite a low number, but still, is because we are reducing the government workforce by numbers that have never been seen before. In other words, government jobs are way down. And as you know, we don't need 10 people to fill 1 job, which is what we had in government in many cases.
This comes as President Trump takes his economic messaging to a rally in Rocky Mount, North Carolina tonight. We expect the president's address to echo his primetime address to the nation on Wednesday night, basically that he inherited an economic mess, inflation nightmare from former President Joe Biden, that he's trying to fix it, and that the numbers are improving. Tiff, back to you.
All right, Mari, thanks for that update. Ukraine says new rounds of talks between Kyiv and Washington are starting in the U.S. today. Secretary of State Marco Rubio explains where things stand in the ongoing peace process. NTD's international correspondent Arian Posdar has more.
What we're trying to figure out here is what can Ukraine live with and what can Russia live with, sort of identify what both sides' positions are and see if we can sort of drive them towards each other to some agreement.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying conflicts usually end in one of two ways: surrender by one side or a negotiated settlement. But Rubio says he doesn't see either side surrendering anytime soon, so it'll have to be a settlement.
A negotiated settlement requires two things: both sides to get something out of it and both sides to give something. And we're trying to figure out what can Russia give and what do they expect to get, what can Ukraine give and what can Ukraine expect to get.
He added that the US can only do so much, and in the end, the final decision will be up to Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine peace negotiators starting a new round of talks with the US team on Friday. Kiev says that's regarding proposals to end the fighting with Russia. The US team held talks in Berlin with Ukrainian and European officials earlier this week. President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukraine and the United States had agreed on several documents, including security guarantees and a reconstruction plan for Ukraine. But he said no aligned final proposals had been agreed on, adding that the territorial issues remained unresolved. Russian President Vladimir Putin offered no compromise on Friday, saying it's up to Ukraine and Europe to make the next move. Meanwhile, in Europe, officials agreed to loan Ukraine over $100 billion. The money will come from the European budget.
For us today, this is an important victory. This is a signal to the Russians that there is no point in them continuing to fight, because we are supported financially, which means we will not crumble at the front.
Most European nations wanted to use frozen Russian assets to aid Ukraine, but such a loan has never been provided before. It turned out to be too complex and politically demanding to resolve at this stage. Russian President Vladimir Putin says the move would amount to theft.
No matter what and how they steal, they will need to give it back at some point. Besides, we will defend our interests in courts.
Possible legal repercussions were precisely one of the main reasons why Europe didn't move ahead with the plan. But there might still be another attempt in the future. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
According to Secretary of State Marco Rubio, narco-terrorist organizations pose the most serious threat to the U.S. and the Western Hemisphere. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on the story.
When it comes to the Western Hemisphere, the single most serious threat to the United States from the Western Hemisphere is from transnational terrorist criminal groups, primarily focused on narco trafficking, but they're in all sides businesses as well. So the good news is we have a lot of countries in the region that openly cooperate and work with us.
The governments of Panama, El Salvador, Ecuador, Trinidad and Tobago, Dominican Republic, Argentina are amongst the partners that the U.S. relies on as it fights foreign terrorist organizations in the region.
But the goal here is to bring security and stability to the hemisphere, to the region we live in, okay, which has not received enough attention.
Thus far, the United States has destroyed 28 narco-terrorist vessels, 18 of them in the Eastern Pacific and 10 of them in the Caribbean. But it is tensions with Venezuela that have drawn the most attention.
There's one place that doesn't cooperate, and it's the illegitimate regime in Venezuela. Not only do they not cooperate with us, they openly cooperate with terrorist and criminal elements. For example, they invite Hezbollah in Iran to operate from their territory. But they also allow the ELN and the FARC dissidents not just to operate from inside of Venezuelan territory, to control Venezuelan territory unencumbered, unimpeded.
Despite overwhelming support from countries in Latin America, lawmakers in the United States are divided over the Trump administration's decisions and strategy in the region.
I have deep, deep concern about the administration's legal rationale for all of these strikes in international waters.
So if any Democrat comes out here and questions that, they're lying to you. They're lying to you because they don't like Pete Hegseth. They don't like President Trump.
If after all this, Maduro is still in power, that's the worst possible signal you could send to Russia, China, Iran.
The administration announced this week a blockade against sanctioned oil tankers coming from and to Venezuela. Regardless of political divisions, Congress voted against 2 resolutions to limit the president's actions in the Caribbean.
They took all of our energy rights. They took all of our oil from not that long ago.
and we want it back.
Total y absolutamente nos ampara y nos protege.
International law protects us. Totally and absolutely, it protects us. Under the 1958 agreements against piracy, international law condemns them as crimes and offenses.
During an interview with NBC News this week, President Trump did not rule out war with Venezuela. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
An Australian teenager is recovering after she risked her life to save children during the Hanukkah shooting attack in Australia. Meanwhile, the man who took the gun away from one of the shooting suspects has received over $1 million in donations.
If I could give up my life saving these children, that's what I was going to do.
When the shooting started at Australia's Bondi Beach on Sunday, 14-year-old Chaya Dodone said she took cover, but then noticed some children were stranded next to their wounded parents.
So I climbed up from under the bench and I grabbed the kids from their mothers and I just jumped on top of them.
And she told the children to repeat after her as she said the words of the Jewish prayer, Shema Israel.
We were saying it and it was loud and we felt really connected to God in that moment.
At some point during the attack, Dodone was shot in the thigh. She's currently using crutches while she recovers. Another victim, Ahmed Al-Ahmed, is still recovering in a hospital from gunshot wounds after he took the gun away from one of the alleged shooters, likely saving many lives. On Friday, he received a check for $1.6 million from people who donated to him after the heroic act. Al-Ahmed recalled that moment.
It was a nice day. Everyone enjoying, celebrating. Everyone was happy, and they deserve to enjoy, and it's them right. We're not gonna stand and keep watching. Enough, it's enough.
Meanwhile, an imam at a mosque in Sydney spoke to his congregation, condemning the attack at Bondi Beach.
What happened in Bondi, my brothers and my sisters, was a heinous crime by all standards, by any measure. And there is no justification for it, and we will accept none.
On Friday, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said the country was going to establish a national gun buyback program to purchase newly banned and illegal firearms from their owners. He also announced that Sunday will be a day of reflection to honor the victims of what he described as the anti-Semitic attack that killed 15 people and injured over 40. On the same day, hundreds of surfers and swimmers came together at Bondi Beach to honor the victims.
It was amazing, amazing. I think the crowd exceeded expectations, but that's what it's all about, right? It's pretty cool to see Bondi back open, everyone getting back together.
Jason Perry, NTD News.
Omer Shamtov was one of hundreds of hostages kidnapped by Hamas terrorists on October 7, 2023, and taken into Gaza. He wouldn't walk free for another 505 days. The young man from Israel spoke with me earlier today here in Phoenix, Arizona. Well, Omer, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So I can't even begin to imagine what you went through, but if we can, I'd like to go back to October 7th. Can you describe the transition for us between early morning, it's a music festival with friends, and then what I can only imagine as utter terror?
Yeah, so like you've said, it was an early morning, music and friends, just enjoying life as 20 years old. And in a single moment, everything changed. The alarms starting to go off, missiles in the air. Suddenly finding me and two other friends running for our lives in this huge open field area, hearing gunshots from every direction, seeing people just dropping down to the floor, getting shot, seeing bodies thrown everywhere in the ground. After maybe an hour or so of running, I get a phone call from a friend who escaped that area, and he went right back into the active terror attack just to save me and two of my other friends. We saw his vehicle, we got inside, and we start driving. Suddenly, 2 vehicles of Hamas, the terror organization, blocking the road, started shooting us immediately. Everyone in the vehicle got kidnapped. Unfortunately, Ori, the friend who came to save us, after 11 months in captivity, he was brutally murdered by Hamas, and his body was retrieved to Israel. And the 2 other friends, we were all of us taken in the back of a pickup truck and just drove into Gaza. The first 54 days, I stayed with one of the friends, Itai Regev, and his sister. She was in another space. But after those 53 days, sorry, they were both released, and I immediately went down into tunnels. The first tunnel that I was in was a tunnel 120 feet below the ground, a very, very small tunnel, a cell, I would say. It was so small I couldn't stand up inside of it, I couldn't spread my arms out. And for 50 days straight, I was inside that cell in complete darkness. I was starved in the most brutal way. There was some points that I had a cracker a day, a small cracker a day, with a couple sips of salty water. I was already so thin and weak that I could barely stand up. I was filthy, I could scrub the dirt off my skin. And right after that, I was moved to another tunnel by a miracle, and thank God, I stayed in that tunnel that was slightly bigger for 400 days, with most of the time 4 terrorists. I was there by myself throughout all those 450 days. And at the time there, I was basically their slave. I was abused physically and mentally. I was starved. I would work for them. I would dig in the tunnels, and I would carry around bombs from places to places. I would carry around their food. And after 505 days of complete hell and nightmare, I was released. Thankfully, I came back home to my parents and my family. And yeah, that's a very short version of my story.
I mean, again, I can't even begin to imagine what that was like, but during your captivity, what got you through it? What was the role of faith, maybe? How did you find the power and the will to keep going?
Yeah, so at the first 2 weeks into captivity, or 3 weeks into captivity, I sank completely. I went into depression, and I blamed everything on God. But after 3 or 2 weeks, I suddenly decided, I understood that I have the free will. I can choose. God created us with free will. We can choose between good and evil, right and wrong, between being a victim or just choosing to do something and survive. And thank God I chose the right path, and I chose the path of God. And I can tell you that even in the most darkest of places, inside that cell that I was in pitch black darkness, I could feel the light, and I could feel God just wrapping His arms around me. I could feel His presence, and I would speak with Him, and it's something that saved me. It really did save me.
Did you believe in God before that, or was that
I always believed in God, but I didn't come from a very religious house. I mean, it wasn't something that was a big part of my life. Now it is. It's the biggest part of my life.
And can you talk to us about the moment when you were released and got to see your parents again?
Of course. I just remember, Hamas, the terror organization, they do this horrible ceremony where they release hostages. And I was on the stage. I saw just thousands of terrorists just cheering up, screaming, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, and shooting in the air. I remember getting in those Red Cross vehicles, driving to an IDF safe zone inside Gaza, seeing the first soldiers welcoming me back home, and then just crossing the border to Israel, seeing my parents again, hugging them after 505 days, just getting all this weight off my shoulders, just able to take a big breath again. It's an amazing experience. It's the happiest day of my life, and I will forever remember it.
I mean, since then, you've been to the White House, you're here now, you spoke at this, I think is the largest AmericaFest in Turning Point history. There's a lot of young people here. What would you say is maybe your mission now?
Yeah, so ever since I came back, my mission was after 9 days I was released, I met with President Trump at the Oval Office, and I thanked him, of course, for everything that he's done for us, and I told him that he was sent by God, that he has the power to bring back all the hostages back home. And ever since that day, it has become my life mission to help advocate and to bring back all the hostages back home. Thank God, 99% of the hostages are home. There is one more hostage, Ran Gavili, that soon, God's willing, he will be home. And it was just my mission to advocate for them, and now I'm trying to focus more on universities and advocate for Israel and just showing people the truth, helping people understand that there is light, and we are the light, and we can spread it together, and we can be together united and strong, and we have to stand in front of evil that's spreading around the world right now, in Europe, in Israel, in Australia just not long ago, and even here in the US. And that's my message, that we will stand together and we will be strong, because when a group of lights are together, and we are the strongest, and we cannot be defeated.
And lastly, on a more personal note, how have you changed? What do you see as the biggest changes, say, Omer October 7th and the Omer sitting here today?
I would say it's a good question. I would say that my mentality, my belief, my faith became more stronger. And I believe that I can achieve anything that I want. And I believe that in the moment that you're trying to spread light and good in the world, light will come right back at you. Light attracts light. And just being a better person, being a better version of myself, and I try to stand for it.
Well, Omer, thank you so much for sharing your story and taking the time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And we'll be right back with more coverage live from Turning Point's AmericaFest here in Phoenix, Arizona. Stay with us. And welcome back to NTD Evening News, live from the Phoenix Convention Center in Arizona. Day 2 of Turning Point USA's AmericaFest 2025 is underway for the first time without Charlie Kirk. A number of distinguished guests and patriots spoke today about freedom, family, and God. And one of today's features was a debate on legalizing marijuana. Let's listen.
How many lives did Charlie impact? That's what we should be thinking about. We are so lucky. We are so lucky to live in this country. Have you ever thought about it? You can live in any environment you want in this country. You don't have to ask anybody. You like tropics, you can live there. You like cold, you can move to Minnesota. It doesn't matter where you want to go. And we have everything, big cities, little cities, the plains, you name it. And we are extraordinarily blessed, and we need to keep it that way. But our founders wanted not only that, they wanted a place where people could live in freedom and where the will of the people would be respected. Now, so many people in Europe said, it'll never work. You can't have a society that's run by the will of the people. You have to have a monarch. You have to have a ruler. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's 250 years later, and we're still here. And we've become a land of promise for so many people. The thing that really gets me is when I think about the things that God has done for us. Do you realize we serve a God who created the universe? He created everything. He is all-powerful, and yet you don't have to make an appointment to talk to him. You don't have to go through lots of layers of people. You can talk to him right now, anytime you want, and he listens. That is an amazing God that we have.
We have to be focused on the future of the American family. We have to make sure that all of our policies, including tax policy and safety net reform, focus on the future of the family. The second is we have to make sure that we're focused on the dignity of work and free enterprise. Those of you who are in college or high school or just out of college know that the free market, as great a concept as it is, has been dominated by corporate welfare, by the big companies being in collusion with big government. We need you and small businesses to be the successes in the United States. And the third is, as the Trump-Vance administration has done so well with all of the peace deals that they've secured, we've got to secure our national security. Not just internationally, but when we walk out of our own front doors in all of the cities where we live.
The war on weed has enabled all kinds of incursions on liberty. Aside from the obvious, which is that over just the last 3 decades, there have been about 20 million arrests for marijuana. There are also harms to our privacy, the sanctity of our homes, our foreign policy, our Second Amendment rights, and much, much more. Decriminalization without legalization is fundamentally incoherent, both morally and logistically.
I believe that the liberal and libertarian argument to destigmatize, normalize, legalize, and even promote the use of drugs of abuse has been a catastrophe for this country. We are a global outlier on this issue. Other countries have not followed our lead, and we've reaped nothing but pain for a generation of decisions that have made drugs more accessible. So what do I mean by drugs of abuse? I mean drugs that produce a subjective high that lead people to want to continue to use and use more over time. Of course, cannabis is one of those drugs. Alcohol is also one of those drugs. And so are several medically prescribed drugs like OxyContin, Adderall, Valium. They're all drugs of abuse.
But my most important job is to be a good husband. My most important job is to be a good father. And so I think all the time, and Rachel and I were talking about this morning, I think about what are we doing to spend time together? Because we're really busy. And so I plan.
He's the thinker.
I plan every single trip that we're going to go on. Every time we're going to go back to Wisconsin, I book everyone's flights. I coordinate the travel. Rachel and I have to spend time together. So when are we going to spend time together? How are we going to, whether it's 4 days or a week together, where we can get away and recalibrate and rekindle. But if you talk to people who are near the end of their life and what they value, what was important to them over the course of their life, it wasn't a bill they passed. It wasn't a congressional race they won. It wasn't the career they had. The most important thing to anybody near the end of their life is their family. Like, what kind of family did I build?
How do you two intentionally prioritize each other and your marriage and protect that in the midst of all the chaos?
Wow, it's such a great question. And we both have always had this philosophy and we've stuck to it. And by the way, at every moment, it's not perfect. I mean, you're trying to, you have to recalibrate because things get off kilter. And we've done that, like when Sean stepped down from Congress because it was just getting to be too much and we needed to refocus on our family. But we've always said that the relationship between he and I is the foundation of this marriage. At the end of the day, as Sean said, your boss, this company is not going to be holding your hand when you're on your deathbed. It's going to be your husband or your wife, your children. That's your legacy. And that's why we have always been very much attracted to this movement, to Turning Point USA, because Turning Point USA, and Charlie Kirk in particular, has always said, get married, have kids. That's been our story. And now that we're at this stage where we actually have grandkids, I can tell you it's worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was one of Charlie's.
Yeah.
The Making of the American Mind is a new book by award-winning author Matthew Spalding. He's also the dean of the Van Andel Graduate School of Government at Hillsdale College, and we're delighted to have him here with us at AmFast. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be with you.
I want to dive right in here because your book revisits the whirlwind, if you will, of events surrounding the signing of the Declaration of Independence. What does it mean to be an American? Why is it worth fighting and loving this country?
That's why I wrote the book. This is a great and unique opportunity, this 250th anniversary, to revisit those things, to go back and relearn a lot of history we've forgotten or perhaps didn't learn in the first place, but more importantly, learn those core truths that are at the heart of the Declaration, which I think you actually unite this country and should unite it again and unite our politics, but also create the deep sense of what we ought to love. Augustine once said that you can't love something unless you know it. So if you want to love America, you've got to know America, and the epic poetry of America is the Declaration of Independence.
I want to dig into that a little bit because what can we learn from our country's founding that gives us hope for our country's future?
I think there are many things we can learn from that. One is the famous part of the Declaration, which we all know, there's a whole document around it, is this statement of self-evident truths. It doesn't begin by saying, we have some of our own opinions we'd like to share with you. It's an assertion of truth. The Declaration is based on the ground that man has metaphysical freedom and has liberty at the core of his very being. They're equal as human beings. They have equal dignity, and they have equal rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, not to do whatever makes you feel good, but to actually pursue substantive happiness, which is the great end of all classical political thought. So the classical Greek and Roman tradition, the Christian tradition come together to form this document. It's ours, it's an American document, but it speaks to the whole world, for that matter, about what it means to be human, what it means to be free, what it means to be dignified as a human being created by God and endowed with rights by God in the image of God.
In terms of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, what did they understand about the personal risk that they were taking by putting their names on that document?
Well, when they signed the Declaration, they really were signing their own death warrant, for sure, because the king had already said they had committed treason, which meant they would be hung, drawn, and quartered if they were captured. And we can track all the signers. Most of them fought in the Revolution. Many of them lost their fortunes. Some of them had their children killed. In one case, the British cavalry surrounded the house. The wife was home. The signer was gone. She refused to give up. They captured her. They bombarded the house with cannons from the ships. She was later freed because George Washington intervened. It's a great noble train of actions they did. Lincoln once called them Iron Men. This notion that somehow the foundings were a bunch of soft guys who wore wigs and wore tricolored hats, it's not true. They were manly, great statesmen who sacrificed everything for this country, and we should remember that and go back, because the question today is, will we be able to say we can pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor?
And Matthew, I want to pivot to your background in education. In your view, where do the deepest problems in American education originate? Is there anything, whether in policy, culture, and, among young people especially, that gives you hope?
Really the problems we have today in education grow out of what is called the conservative movement, which was after the Civil War, when various forms of European thought come over to America and shape this new view of how we should look at things. John Dewey is the great progressive historian, a progressive educational theorist that shapes all of American education. It becomes something very different. It becomes looking towards progress and evolution and change. It gave up on the notion that there are eternal truths to be transferred, to be taught, that history was something from which we could learn things. And that divide played out over time, changes our universities, which then in turn change our high schools and K through 12 curriculum and education. So you now see this great divide. Most of education in this country is found to be in institutions that don't believe in, say, self-evident truths, or there are groundings that we should look back to. Having said that, I actually have great hope. We see all sorts of signs, educational reform, K through 12 reform. Hillsdale has online courses which we offer for free in addition to our college. They're taken by millions of people. So there are all sorts of signs. There's a revival of classical education. The human mind was not made to be ruled. It was made to be free, to think and to be liberalized in terms of a liberal education. It yearns to know, and that always will give us hope if we can break down those bad institutions and start recovering good institutions which provide the education which parents and children and young minds overwhelmingly want.
And during the Cold War, Americans were keenly aware of the threat of communism abroad. Do you think Americans today fully recognize the influence of cultural Marxism here?
That's a keen worry. You're right in the sense there was a great national move against communism because they saw the threat more imminent. I mean, the effect of Stalin and the circumstances of the Cold War, the Soviet Union. Today, it's less apparent. We've created this divide. So we have two problems. We have communism very strong in China. It's becoming more communist, not less. And yet, at home, we don't see that for what the threat it might be. And there's a growing sense of cultural Marxism that's kind of filled the void of a very bad educational system that is increasingly threatening. And then you have students that really don't see these ideas as problematic. We haven't tried them before somehow, so we're willing to try them again. So I do worry about that, which is why I think this 250th anniversary of America, which is this unique moment when the national mind is going to be focused on a series of historical events, is a great moment to rediscover that history, to relearn it, but also by doing so, that history will inevitably point you towards understanding truths that transcend ourselves, that are outside of ourselves, that tell us something about the human person and human dignity, that goes directly against that cultural Marxism, against those bad arguments and bad ideas. And in relearning that and recapturing that, I think we want to encourage our young people to see the great story, the nobility of it, and hope that captures their minds in a way that helps us push back against those things.
Expanding on that in the positive realm, at Hillsdale College, it's known for its commitment to traditional education and civic formation. When you look at the broader American educational landscape today, though, what concerns you the most?
We're all familiar with the particulars of how things are taught now and how universities are organized and how bad things are. I would probably say the deeper thing I worry about is actually the deeper moral rot, which we see reflected in this kind of intellectual rejection of truth. Once that takes hold, that becomes a real serious problem, and it's no longer education. Now it's all merely ideology. That, however, I think is most countered by a rediscovery of those truths, which we see in this growing educational movements, in the rise of religion and interest in religion among young people that is really unfounded in recent decades. I think this anniversary of the Declaration will be a moment to rediscover that more. So I think as much as I see that moral rot and these bad educational systems almost everywhere you look, you see signs everywhere in families and in classical education and all around us and people wanting to know the truth about things. I think we see actually right there the seeds, if you will, of a deeper and more important recovery of what is most important. This sense of that there is a moral truth, there is a truth worth pursuing, and that pursuit of that truth should define what we are and what we do with our lives. And that's really at the root of Western civilization, the thing we wish to conserve.
Well, thank you for that positive note. And Matthew Spalding, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Vice President J.D. Vance is emerging as a potential contender in the 2028 presidential race. Turning Point USA executive Erica Kirk says her organization would work to help elect Vance to the White House. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has ruled out a potential run for the presidency if Vance seeks the GOP nomination. Does the vice president have support from everyday Americans? NTD's Sam Wong was right outside the White House to hear from the people.
What do you make of the possibility of J.D. Vance potentially running in 2028?
I personally would love to see Vance run in 2028. I like him. I think where he came from gives him some objectivity that a lot of political candidates lack. And right now, I think the way he's doing things as vice president has been positive.
I think it would be an absolute continuation of the same policies, with maybe him being a little more presidential.
Scary. However, I think following the present occupant of the White House, I don't think he has a snowball's chance.
We'll be safer as a nation if he does run. And he'll continue what's continuing now.
We're only 1 year into this term. We've got 3 years left. A lot's going to change in the next 3 years. So J.D. Vance, possibly a candidate now, but again, lots going to change over the next 3 years. We'll see.
We love the Second Lady and J.D. Vance. Both of them are awesome, and if they can continue what Trump's doing, that would be great. There's talk of Trump doing a third term. That would be great, too. So we
Don't
love
be
it all.
controversial. The president said just two, he's done.
Anyway, we need more time to get the country back on track, for sure.
So what do you think it's going to look like? Let's say a Vance presidency. Do you think it's going to be like a continuation of what's happening now?
I would expect it'll be a toned-down version of the present campaign. Still acidic, but not as acidic as it is now.
What are some of the main aspects of J.D. Vance that make you guys want to vote for him in 2028?
He's got a strong character. He doesn't back down. He knows how to speak. He's for the Make America Great agenda.
He's also a good representation of an American family.
I would like to think that he would bring back bipartisanship into this country, which we sorely need. I think he's a good Christian. He can bring back our Christian values.
I think, he served, which gives him some credibility, I think, with a lot of Americans. He comes from very humble beginnings and has some objectivity about poverty and growing up in that and the need for support, but also comes from a Christian conservative background, which appeals to a lot of people. So I feel like he touches a lot of areas that a candidate in the past hasn't really done.
Minnesota's fraud investigations continue to broaden. Federal prosecutors have charged a half dozen additional suspects with scamming the Medicaid program. NTD's David Lamb reports.
Federal authorities continue to investigate accusations of rampant fraud plaguing the Medicaid system. The Justice Department announced charges against 6 new suspects on Thursday and estimated that the state of Minnesota's fraud losses could exceed $9 billion in Medicaid alone.
The magnitude of the fraud in Minnesota cannot be overstated. It's staggering amounts of money that have been lost.
2 people, Abdinajib Yusuf and Hasha Hassan, are accused of carrying out schemes to obtain reimbursements from the state's autism program for services that were not actually provided. The schemes allegedly totaled more than $20 million. Hassan pleaded guilty. First Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson said that Medicaid officials are reviewing $18 billion in claims as far back as 2018. He says at least half of that amount could be fraudulent. Thompson said, "Every day we look under a rock and find a new $50 million fraud scheme." 4 others were charged with defrauding Minnesota's Housing Stability Services program by allegedly submitting false claims meant to assist people with housing.
This fraud tourism is new, although we've heard of it as investigators here. I mean, these defendants came here not to enjoy our lakes, our beautiful summers, or our warm people. They came here because they knew and understood that Minnesota was a place where taxpayer money could be taken with little risk and few consequences.
These charges follow a series of developments in the fraud cases. On December 12th, Governor Tim Walz appointed an anti-fraud czar. But 3 days later, Education Secretary Linda McMahon called for the governor's resignation over the alleged fraud in Minnesota. The Labor Department also said it was sending a strike team to investigate unemployment fraud in the state. David Lamb, NTD News.
A Milwaukee judge has been found guilty after helping an illegal immigrant avoid arrest outside her courtroom. She's facing a possible 5 years in prison. And ICE says they've just finished the most successful hiring campaign in U.S. history. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
The Wisconsin judge was found guilty of obstruction for helping an illegal Mexican immigrant avoid arrest by federal agents outside of her courtroom. However, she was found not guilty of concealing him. A jury returned the verdicts after a 6-hour deliberation. Milwaukee County Circuit Court Judge Hannah Dugan faces up to 5 years in prison following the verdict. Interim U.S. Attorney Brad Schimmel said that Dugan's actions led to a dangerous chase.
The defendant's actions provided an opportunity for a wanted subject to flee outside that safe courthouse environment, which led to a dangerous foot chase through automobile traffic and eventually to an agent taking the subject to the ground, which is always hazardous for both the officer and the suspect.
Hands off Dugan! Protesters gathered outside of the courthouse earlier this week when the trial began.
We want to stand up. We want to stand up for Judge Dugan.
It's important to also, I think, make a presence here and let people know that ICE is not welcome in Milwaukee.
In response to the verdict, FBI Director Kash Patel said no one is above the law. And Wisconsin's Republican Assembly leaders have responded, saying they will begin impeachment proceedings if Dugan does not immediately resign. Dugan's sentencing date has not been scheduled yet. And the Department of Homeland Security reports that it has received more than 220,000 applications for more than 10,000 open positions. ICE Director Todd Lyons says ICE was established in the wake of 9/11, and it's inspiring to witness so many dedicated individuals step forward to protect our homeland. I encourage all those who are committed to safeguarding our nation to apply and join this important mission. The agency says 11,751 law enforcement officers, attorneys, criminal investigators, and mission support staff have officially been hired, calling it the most successful recruitment campaign in the nation's history. Jason Blair, NTD News.
And with the holidays around the corner, airports, train stations, and highways are filling up as travelers head out to celebrate. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more from California's Ontario International Airport.
The holiday travel rush is officially underway this weekend, with AAA expecting a record 122 million people traveling by air and road, with Saturday being the busiest day over the next 2 weeks. 122.4 million Americans are projected to travel at least 50 miles from home during the holiday period, with 109.5 million driving, 8 million flying, and nearly 5 million traveling by bus, train, or cruise. The official holiday travel period runs from Saturday, December 20th through Thursday, January 1st, and this year's forecast surpasses last year's record of nearly 120 million travelers. 89% of travelers are expected to hit the road. According to AAA, gas prices are also lower than last holiday season, when the national average ended 2024 at $3.04 a gallon. For the first time in 4 years, the national average has dipped below $3 a gallon, and prices could continue to ease as the year comes to a close. We asked several travelers their plans for the holiday season.
I'm waiting for my 2 youngest daughters to come in from Oklahoma, and our plans is all family this year, so we're just going to spend family time together.
We're heading to Sacramento and then eventually on the way to Redding to have Christmas with the family.
Well, we usually have a nice big meal, get together, go see Christmas lights, just enjoy the day. We go to church.
Travel experts are urging drivers to plan ahead, allow extra time, and be prepared for heavy traffic, while air travelers are encouraged to arrive at the airport early and monitor flight updates closely. So whether you're taking a flight or hitting the road, stay safe this holiday season and enjoy the festivities. Reporting from the city of Ontario, Christina Corona, NTD News.
And stay with us. We'll be right back with more coverage live from Turning Point's AmericaFest in Phoenix, Arizona.